The silent killer, the man they couldn't kill. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the ordinary, beyond the realm of what seems possible? What if I told you there are stories so incredible they could reshape your understanding of human potential? What if the most unassuming person could become the deadliest weapon? In this video, we'll dive into a world where reality surpasses fiction and uncover the mystery of a man whose name became a legend. How did an ordinary farm boy from Wisconsin become an aerial victory record holder who was never surpassed? And what was the restlessness that almost destroyed his career but ultimately made him invincible? Prepare to learn the stark truth about what it took to become America's ace of aces. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. In 1944, high above the scorching jungles of the Pacific, a solitary predator meticulously scanned the skies. Below him, Japanese fighters desperately climbed, attempting to intercept American bombers. They couldn't have imagined that they were being hunted by something more than just an enemy pilot. They were being hunted by a ghost. This ghost wasn't a hardened killer, nor a soldier with years of experience. He was a quiet, unassuming farm boy from Wisconsin. By the end of the war, he would have 40 confirmed victories, a record of aerial lethality that remains unsurpassed to this day. How did the most inconspicuous pilot in the U.S. Army Air Forces transform into their deadliest weapon of war? This story is a narrative about a man who seemed impossible to kill, a record no one could break, and the harsh truth behind the title of America's Ace of Aces. While Bong honed his marksmanship, the world around him plunged into the flames of war. In Europe, the Nazi war machine relentlessly crushed one nation after another. In the Pacific, the Japanese Empire launched a campaign of brutal conquests. By 1941, America, though still a sleeping giant, could already feel the breath of war carried across the ocean. Bong, like many young men of his generation, heard that call. He enrolled in the Army Air Corps' Aviation cadet program. He wasn't driven by a thirst for glory or accolades, but by a simple yet profound love of flight, of the feeling of freedom in the sky. His instructors noticed it instantly. This young man was a born pilot. He didn't just fly a plane, he merged with it, becoming an integral part of it. The controls were an extension of his own body, intuitive and obedient. But along with this natural talent, a dangerous trait emerged, a restlessness, an untamed energy that demanded an outlet. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. While serving at Hamilton Field in California, 2nd Lieutenant Bong had the opportunity to encounter the most advanced and arguably the most lethal fighter in the American arsenal, the P-38 Lightning. He fell in love with the machine at first sight, and this passion almost ended his career before it even began. Official reports, heavily censored and meticulously archived, documented only a series of unauthorized acrobatic displays. But the reality was far more reckless and audacious. Bong treated the skies over San Francisco as his personal playground. He flew his P-38 so low over Market Street that pedestrians on the streets could clearly make out the rivets on its wings. He performed a loop-the-loop over the Golden Gate Bridge, a blatant, breathtaking violation of every conceivable rule and regulation. Of course, he was showing off, but at the same time, he was pushing the limits, his own and the plane's, trying to understand what they were capable of. His commander, General George Kenney, was a man who had absolutely no tolerance for hotshots and rule breakers. He was stern, yet a brilliant tactician, responsible for the entire 5th Air Force. When Bong was brought before him, expecting to be immediately and permanently grounded, the young pilot faced a true storm. The reprimand was severe, a dressing down that would have broken a less resilient man. But Kenny, beyond his anger, saw something else in the young pilot's eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It was absolute confidence, an unconditional, unwavering mastery of his machine. He saw what the flight instructor had already seen, a prodigy, a genius of flight. Kenny, one of the war's most astute commanders, made a decision that would later change the course of the air war in the Pacific. Instead of destroying the young man's career, he decided to turn him into a weapon. He kept Bong under his direct command, assigned him additional, specialized training, and then gave him full reign. By September 1942, Bong was deployed to New Guinea. This was the front line of the war, a brutal, unforgiving battlefield where American forces desperately tried to halt the relentless Japanese advance. The Japanese pilots he was about to face were no rookies. They were battle-hardened veterans, true masters of their craft, having fought since 1937. They flew the Mitsubishi A6M0, a fighter so agile and so legendary that it could outperform almost anything the Allies could put in the air. On paper, the farm boy from Wisconsin with relatively few flight hours stood no chance. But Bong wasn't flying just any plane. He was flying the P-38 Lightning, designed by Lockheed's legendary Clarence Kelly Johnson. The P-38 was a true monster, a revolutionary aircraft unlike anything else in the sky. Its unique twin-boom design, powered by two roaring Allison engines, gave it incredible speed and astonishing climb rates. Most importantly, all its armament, 4 50-caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon, was concentrated in the nose. This was a critically important design choice. Wing-mounted machine guns typically had to be angled so their trajectories converged at a specific point. Fire too early or too late, and you'd miss. However, the P-38's firepower struck straight ahead, forming a concentrated buzzsaw of lead and high-explosive shells. If a pilot could get a target in their sights for even a fraction of a second, the result was utter destruction. But the Lightning also had a dark side. It was, in essence, a killer. The aircraft was exceedingly difficult to master and control. Its advanced turbochargers were temperamental and required a delicate touch. During high-speed dives, it suffered from a terrifying phenomenon called compressibility, where shock waves formed over the wings, locking up the controls and sending the pilot into an unrecoverable dive. Dozens of American pilots had already died simply trying to tame this unruly beast. Japanese air combat masters were well aware of Allied tactics. They would lure American fighters into low-speed, turning dogfights where the Zero was the undisputed king. An American pilot attempting to maneuver on equal terms with the Zero often perished in seconds. Richard Bong didn't try to maneuver. In his first combat sorties over Buna, New Guinea, he observed carefully, learned, and meticulously calculated. He watched the Zeros dance in the sky and realized he couldn't win their game, so he invented his own. His doctrine was brutally simple and deadly. First, use the P-38's powerful engines to climb significantly above the enemy. Always maintain the altitude advantage. Second, convert that altitude into speed, diving on the target in a high-speed pass. Third, unleash the devastating firepower of the nose-mounted guns in one precise, controlled burst. Fourth, use his momentum to climb back to a safe altitude. Never linger. Never engage in a turning fight. Operate on a hit-and-run principle. His combat reports were a reflection of his personality, understated, clinical, and supremely effective. He noted altitude, combat conditions, and outcome. What the reports didn't reflect was the work of a genius. Other pilots fired long, hopeful bursts of ammunition. Bong was different. His gun camera footage, later meticulously studied by intelligence officers, showed a chilling pattern. Patient stalking, careful positioning, a short furious pass with fire, and an immediate breakaway. His squadron mates were in awe. Major Thomas Lynch, another distinguished ace, described Bong's technique as that of a surgeon. He was patient, precise, and wasted nothing. His ammunition expenditure efficiency was off the charts, almost fantastical. Key to his success was an innate understanding of lead, the art of shooting not where the target is currently, but where it will be in a moment. Most pilots struggled with this complex skill their entire careers. For Bong, it was as natural as breathing. Imagine a sky filled with fire and terror. Overhead, an unstoppable wave of enemy aircraft, and it seems there's no escape. Are you familiar with that feeling of hopelessness, when everything around you crumbles, and hope fades with every passing second? But what if, at that very moment, when despair grips hearts, a shadow appears, bringing retribution, capable of changing the course of events? Today, we'll unveil the story of the man who became that shadow, changing not only the course of a single battle, but an entire war. How did an ordinary farm boy transform into America's most formidable ace? What allowed him to achieve the impossible while others fell under the enemy's onslaught? And what unimaginable price did he pay for his legendary fame? Prepare to discover how one P-38 Lightning pilot, nicknamed the Fork-tailed Devil, made the enemy tremble. He was there where you might have felt powerless, but he found a way to soar higher, overcome fear, and become a symbol of hope. His triumphs in the skies multiplied with each new mission. First one victory, then two in a single sortie. Whether an enemy bomber or an elusive Zero, each fell victim to his ruthless skill. He glided through the skies like an invisible wraith appearing from nowhere, delivering his deadly strike and vanishing back into the blinding glare of the sun. Japanese military strategists, meticulously analyzing their catastrophic losses, soon began to realize a chilling pattern. These furious, incredibly fast attacks always came from above, executed by what they dubbed the Two-Tailed Devil. This is how the P-38 earned its ominous yet accurate nickname, the Fork-tailed Devil. And Richard Bong, piloting it, became the most terrifying embodiment of that nickname. On his fighter, he proudly emblazoned the name of his sweetheart, Marge. This aircraft became an iconic sight in the Pacific skies, a harbinger of doom for his adversaries and a beacon of hope for the bomber crews he so effectively protected. By early 1943, his name was etched onto the list of aces. By the end of that year, his victory tally grew at an astonishing rate, transforming the unassuming farm boy into a genuine living legend. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. July 1943 arrived, and over Leh Harbor in New Guinea, the air literally vibrated with smoke and pervasive fear. A grand armada of Japanese bombers, escorted by a retinue of Zero fighters, rumbled towards Allied ground positions. For the soldiers huddled in their foxholes, the sight seemed an unstoppable wave of impending destruction. Yet high above them, in the dazzling rays of the sun, Bong and his squadron climbed, preparing for a true slaughter. This engagement would become a quintessential example of Bong's evolving genius. He was no longer a solitary predator operating on instinct. Now he acted as the conductor of an aerial ballet filled with violence. Instead of recklessly plunging into the fray, he held his group at a superior altitude, forcing the Japanese to constantly look up directly into the blinding light. With chilling composure, he waited until the enemy formation began its deadly bomb run. He waited for that precise moment when a bomber would expose its vulnerable belly, or when a Zero broke formation. Only then did he give the command to attack. The P-38 streaked down from the heavens like a pack of silver sharks. Bong led the assault, his aircraft a mere blur of incredible speed and unwavering determination. He avoided direct engagements with the more agile Zeros, instead heading straight for the bombers into the very heart of the enemy formation. One single perfectly aimed burst from his nose-mounted cannon, and a Mitsubishi bomber literally disintegrated in plumes of fire and black smoke. He wasted no time watching it fall. He was already climbing, converting his kinetic energy back into invaluable altitude, scanning for his next target. His squadron, following his refined example, struck and vanished instantly, sowing chaos and complete confusion among the Japanese pilots who were powerless to track the far faster and more powerful American fighters. The results of these tactics were simply devastating. Numerous enemy aircraft were destroyed with minimal Allied losses. Japanese combat reports from that period are brimming with a sense of genuine terror, describing encounters with American fighters that attacked with a speed and precision they simply couldn't counter. Japanese pilots now clearly understood they were being systematically hunted by true masters of their craft. By November 1943, Richard Bong had credited 21 confirmed aerial victories to his name. This wasn't just an impressive statistical achievement, it became a historical milestone. From then on, he was officially considered one of America's greatest aces, a genuine celebrity in a war that desperately craved heroes. General Kenny, always distinguished by his shrewdness and strategic thinking, perfectly understood the symbolic value of such a man. He personally presented Bong with the Distinguished Service Cross, and immediately after, the general made a decision Bong received with deep aversion. He sent him home. Bong was ordered to return to the United States for a war bond tour. Suddenly, this taciturn pilot, who preferred his actions to speak for themselves, found himself in the spotlight. He was greeted by cheering crowds, celebrated as a national hero. His face adorned newspaper pages from New York to California. The American public embraced him with enthusiasm. He was the embodiment of the unassuming farm boy who became a dragon slayer, a living symbol of American ingenuity and unparalleled courage. However, Bong himself was deeply unhappy. He despised all the ceremonies, the endless speeches, and the ceaseless handshakes. In his letters to Marge, he sincerely confessed that his heart remained in the Pacific, among the pilots who continued to fight and die. He felt like an imposter, a showpiece, while his comrades were in the thick of the deadly fight. He relentlessly petitioned General Kenny, practically begging to be sent back into combat. Eventually, General Kenny relented to his persistence. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. By March 1944, Richard Bong once again set foot on New Guinea soil, and a real surprise awaited him there. Before him stood a brand new, significantly upgraded P-38J Lightning. This wasn't just an aircraft. It was a refined machine, built for maximum efficiency in the skies. The new modification boasted improved engines, a more advanced cockpit heating system, critically important for high-altitude flights, and, most significantly, hydraulically boosted control surfaces. This revolutionary innovation significantly enhanced the P-38's maneuverability at high speeds, addressing one of its major vulnerabilities. In Bong's skilled hands, the P-38J ceased to be an ordinary fighter. It transformed into a surgical scalpel, capable of incredible precision. He returned to a completely different war. Years of relentless attrition had taken their toll on the Japanese Air Force. Many of their experienced veteran pilots had perished, replaced by young men with severely limited training and minimal flight hours. The gap in combat experience between the opposing sides had widened into a chasm. For an American ace like Bong, with hundreds of hours of combat experience, encountering these inexperienced pilots often, unfortunately, resembled a hawk meeting a sparrow. His tactical arsenal continued to evolve. He had perfected the head-on attack, a maneuver requiring unimaginable courage. Most pilots instinctively swerved away too early, gripped by the fear of a mid-air collision. Bong, however, steadfastly held his course, his gaze locked on the enemy, opening fire until the very last possible second. The closing speed in such attacks exceeded 800 miles per hour, and the window for target destruction was less than 1 second. Bong's gun camera footage strikingly demonstrates how he repeatedly flew directly through the debris of his vanquished victims. And this is just one part of his incredible tactics. Next, we'll learn how he used his new aircraft to achieve even more astonishing results. By June 1944, what seemed inevitable came to pass. During a mission over New Guinea, Bong expertly shot down his 27th and 28th enemy aircraft. With this outstanding achievement, he surpassed the legendary record of Eddie Rickenbacker, set back in World War I, which stood at 26 confirmed victories. Richard Ira Bong was now officially recognized as America's greatest living ace. General Kenny felt both pride and deep apprehension. He immediately issued an order forbidding Bong from routine combat sorties, stating emphatically that he was too valuable to risk his life. Bong, in the general's conviction, was a national treasure, and his loss would be a catastrophic blow to the morale of the entire nation. Bong was absolutely furious. Grounded and deeply frustrated, he tirelessly argued that his true place was in the sky, leading his men. Ultimately, an uneasy compromise was reached. Kenny allowed him to continue flying, but only on high-priority missions and solely as a flight leader, where his role was to direct combat, not to directly engage in every dogfight. He became, in essence, a general in the sky, but what this meant for his personal struggle and how he coped with this new burden, that's a story we'll uncover next. Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of a precipice, with an abyss of doubt and anxiety beneath your feet. Do you feel it? It's a familiar sensation, isn't it? When the world around you seems to crumble, and you, like a cornered animal, search for a way out of the labyrinth of your own fears. We've all been there, and each of us has asked, how do I get out of this? How do I find strength when everything is against me? Today, we won't just tell a story. We'll delve into a world where the impossible becomes reality, where a person defies fate and emerges victorious. How do you maintain resilience when all circumstances are against you? What is the true cost of courage when every new day is a struggle for survival? And what drives those who, despite all obstacles, continue to press forward, leaving behind a trail of unyielding will? In this video, we will unveil the secrets of incredible resilience and show how, even in the most desperate situations, a path to victory can be found. Prepare to discover how one person, facing insurmountable challenges, not only persevered, but became a legend. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. His path was paved with sky, not a calm and serene one, but one torn by flashes of fire and the roar of explosions. Limitations, it seemed, only spurred him on, driving him towards maximum danger. October 1944, Balikpapan, Borneo. A vital mission lay before him to provide cover for B-24 bombers striking Japanese oil refineries. The Japanese, desperately trying to protect their fuel supplies, threw every available force into the fight. The sky became a true vortex of chaos. Bong, leading his P-38 squadron, positioned themselves with the sun at their backs, a classic maneuver to blind the enemy. He led the first attack, diving from above and instantly downing an enemy fighter. But no sooner had he begun to climb than his own plane was rocked by a powerful impact. An enemy fighter had gotten on his tail. Cannon shells ripped through his right engine. Warning lights flickered on the instrument panel. The engine sputtered, caught fire, and failed completely. Most pilots in such a situation would have immediately left the battle, returning to base on a single engine. That would have been reasonable. That would have been sane. But Richard Bong, at that moment, was guided by neither reason nor sanity. He was a predator. He feathered the dead propeller to reduce drag, activated the fire extinguisher, and calmly assessed the situation. He was still flying. His gun still worked, and there were still enemies in the sky. With his crippled P-38 trailing smoke, he turned the heavy fighter back into the fray. On one engine, with severely degraded performance, he tracked another Japanese fighter and shot it down. Only then did he turn for home, carefully guiding his ravaged aircraft across hundreds of miles of open ocean. When he landed, the ground crews were horrified. His P-38 was riddled with bullet holes. An entire engine was destroyed. They declared the aircraft unfit for combat, destined for the scrap heap. But they underestimated the deep bond between a pilot and his machine. Bong personally supervised the repairs, and within weeks he was back in the sky in his Marge. This single incident cemented his legend. He wasn't just skilled, he was fearless. He wasn't just an ace, he was unyielding. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. After that day, his victory tally relentlessly climbed, approaching a mark no one thought possible. 35, 36, 38. By December 1944, he had 40 confirmed aerial victories. This number was staggering, an achievement so far beyond the norm that it seemed almost unreal. In the United States, at the highest levels of command, a decision was made. General Douglas MacArthur himself issued an order to General Kenny. It was no longer a request. Richard Bong was to be permanently grounded. His war was over. He was too valuable a symbol to lose. America's ace of aces was going home for good, whether he liked it or not. His last combat mission was on December 17, 1944. It was an uneventful patrol with no enemy contact. Unceremoniously, the combat career of the most successful fighter pilot in American history came to an end. He returned to the United States, not to the quiet farm he dreamed of, but to a whirlwind of national adoration, to a nation weary of war. Richard Bong was more than just a pilot. He was an icon of hope, a symbol of the quiet, determined strength that would ultimately win the war. He was awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest award for valor. In the hallowed halls of the Pentagon, Secretary of War Henry Stimson placed the medal around his neck. The official citation was read, a dry military account of deeds bordering on the incredible. It spoke of his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. It mentioned his unwavering courage and brilliant leadership, and his relentless pursuit of the enemy even when outnumbered and facing heavy opposition. Bong stood there, characteristically quiet and humble, looking almost awkward in his dress uniform. This was a man who communicated through action, not words, who was more comfortable in the cramped cockpit of a P-38 at 20,000 feet than in a room full of generals and politicians. After the ceremonies, he finally found a moment of peace. On February 10, 1945, he married his sweetheart, Marge Vattendahl, in a church in Superior, Wisconsin. For a brief moment, the deadliest ace in American history was simply a husband. A young man hoping to build a life far from the scream of diving planes and the flash of cannon fire. The war in Europe was in its final bloody throes, and the end of the global conflict, at last, seemed near. But what was the true secret to his phenomenal success? How did one man in one specific aircraft achieve a record that seems statistically impossible? The answer lies in a combination of the man, the machine, and a tactical doctrine years ahead of its time. Post-war analysis by Army Air Force's experts studying his gun camera footage revealed a level of accuracy that was simply breathtaking. Bong's hit percentage, the ratio of rounds fired to targets destroyed, was extraordinarily high, far surpassing the average of other pilots. He didn't waste ammunition. He didn't rely on luck. He relied on a cold calculation of speed, angle, and timing that was ingrained in his very being. His early life as a hunter, tracking prey in the woods, trained his mind to see the world in terms of lead, deflection, and one perfect shot. His tactical philosophy, honed over more than 200 combat missions, became the gold standard for American fighter pilots in the Pacific. It was a doctrine built on discipline, not aggression. While other pilots engaged in swirling dogfights, the kind of romantic duels seen in movies, Bong understood this was suicide against the nimble Japanese Zero. His system was a brutal science. First, energy. Always maintain an energy advantage through superior altitude and speed. The P-38 was an excellent high-altitude fighter. Bong used this to dictate the terms of every engagement. Second, positioning. Use the sun, clouds, and the enemy's own formation to achieve an advantageous position before firing a single shot. He was a master of patient stalking, sometimes maneuvering for extended periods to get the perfect attack angle. Third, firepower. Use the concentrated nose-mounted armament of the P-38. He knew if he could bring his guns to bear on a target for even a fraction of a second, the fight was over. Fourth, discipline. Never, ever try to outmaneuver a Zero. After an attack pass, he used his superior speed to disengage, regaining altitude to set up his next strike. He fought a vertical war, a battle of energy and physics, while his opponents were still fighting a horizontal one. Imagine being at the pinnacle of your profession, an undefeated champion whose name echoes around the world. Then, overnight, the world around you changes, and everything you knew, everything you'd spent years mastering, becomes obsolete. Have you ever felt your finely honed skills, seemingly timeless and flawless, suddenly lose relevance in the face of inevitable and rapid change? This story isn't just about war and planes. It's about a man who conquered the skies of one era, but found himself on the very edge of another, where the rules of the game had changed forever. How did the most outstanding ace of his time, a symbol of courage and invincibility, become a test pilot for a completely new, deadly technology? What was this transition that demanded not only unparalleled bravery, but a complete re-evaluation of everything he knew about flying? And what tragic, almost mystical irony of fate awaited him on the threshold of this new, alien world? Do you think the greatest heroes always die in glorious battles to the roar of cannons, at the zenith of their military glory? This story will show you how the world can change in an instant, leaving even the most legendary warriors beyond comprehension at the crossroads of two worlds. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. At the heart of Richard Bong's tactics, an indispensable part of him, was the P-38 Lightning, the perfect instrument for his unique style of aerial combat. Its twin-engine configuration gave the pilot an invaluable sense of reliability, offering a vital level of redundancy. This machine could absorb an incredible amount of damage and still bring its pilot home, as Bong brilliantly proved in the skies over Borneo. The tricycle landing gear provided stability on the rough, improvised airstrips of the Pacific Islands, and the turbochargers ensured high-altitude performance that many Japanese fighters simply couldn't match. In the hands of an ordinary pilot, the P-38 was just a good fighter. But in Richard Bong's hands, it transformed into a weapon of historic significance. The letters he wrote to Marge revealed the man behind the legend. He rarely spoke of his victories. Instead, he wrote of his duty, of his focus on efficiently completing the task at hand of protecting bomber formations and supporting ground troops. He saw his role not as a glory-seeking ace, but as a protector, a guardian for those who relied on him. There was no ego, no bravado. There was only the quiet, deadly efficiency of a master of his craft, foreshadowing imminent change. As 1945 dawned, Bong's life was supposed to be safe and prestigious. He was a national hero, a loving husband, and a symbol of American victory. But the warrior within him could not stay away from the cockpit. Military command, eager to utilize his unprecedented experience, gave him a new yet no less dangerous assignment: to become a test pilot. The world of aviation stood on the brink of a massive revolution. Piston engines, which had reigned supreme in the skies for 40 years, were rapidly becoming obsolete. A new, terrifyingly powerful technology was emerging: the jet engine. At Lockheed's secret Skunk Works plant in Burbank, California, Kelly Johnson, the same genius who designed the P-38, created America's first operational jet fighter, the P-80 Shooting Star. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The P-80 was the embodiment of the future. A sleek, futuristic machine with a single jet engine that produced 4,000 pounds of thrust, propelling it to speeds over 500 miles per hour. This was an entirely new mode of flight, representing a quantum leap in performance and technology. And the military needed its best, most experienced pilots to tame this new beast, to write the rule book for a new era of aerial combat. Richard Bong, the recognized master of piston engine fighters, was assigned to help usher in the age of jet aviation. He was transitioning from the peak of one generation of technology to the very beginning of the next. He was once again on the cutting edge, but this time the enemy wasn't a Japanese zero in his sights. The enemy was the unknown. The assignment to test the P-80 Shooting Star placed Richard Bong at the epicenter of a true technological earthquake. He, the man who had mastered the most complex piston fighter ever built, was once again a student. The P-80 was a machine of an entirely different kind. It had no propeller, no torque, just the raw, roaring thrust of a jet engine. It responded differently. It landed at terrifyingly high speeds. It climbed as if pulled by an invisible hand. Every pilot transitioning to jets was, in the very real sense, a pioneer, exploring a dangerous and uncharted frontier. Bong, with his innate mechanical intuition, adapted quickly. He respected the new aircraft, studying its systems with the same quiet intensity he had once applied to combat tactics. He was no longer a hunter of men, but an explorer of a machine, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and reporting his findings to the engineers who were literally inventing the future of aviation. For several months, this was his new life. A life of flight logs, technical briefings, and the constant high-pitched whine of a jet turbine. But even in this new world, his last, most unexpected encounter awaited him. Then came August 6, 1945. It was a hot, clear summer day at the Lockheed Air Terminal in Burbank, California. For Major Richard Bong, it was a routine workday. He was scheduled to conduct a standard acceptance flight on a new P-80, fresh off the assembly line. He went through his pre-flight checks, suited up, and climbed into the cockpit of the futuristic machine. The canopy closed, sealing him inside. The P-80's engine started with its characteristic whine. Bong taxied to the runway, received clearance, and pushed the throttle forward. The plane rapidly accelerated, pressing him back into his seat, and gracefully lifted into the California sky. But just moments after takeoff, something went catastrophically wrong. The primary fuel pump failed. The engine, starved of fuel, flamed out. Below him, the sprawling suburbs of Los Angeles stretched to the horizon. He was at a critically low altitude, without power, in a machine that, without its engine, flew like a brick. For a man who had survived 200 combat missions, who had faced swarms of enemy fighters, who had brought a damaged P-38 home on one engine, this was his last, most desperate battle. It was a battle against gravity and time. He fought for control. His training kicked in. He attempted emergency restart procedures, but there wasn't enough altitude. He tried to glide the dead aircraft back to the runway, but he couldn't. In the last fleeting seconds of his life, as the ground rushed towards him, he made a final decision. He attempted to eject, but it was too late. He was too low. The P-80 crashed into a field and exploded in a fireball. Major Richard Ira Bong, ace of aces, farm boy from Wisconsin, the deadliest American fighter pilot in history, died instantly. He was 24 years old. On that very same day, halfway around the world, an American B-29 bomber named the Enola Gay flew high over the clear skies of Japan. It opened its bomb bay doors and released a single, strange-looking weapon. That weapon fell on the city of Hiroshima, and in a blinding flash of light, it erased the city from the face of the earth and unleashed the horrifying power of the atom. The world had changed forever. The news of Richard Bong's death, the death of America's greatest war hero, became a minor story, buried beneath colossal global headlines, announcing the dawn of the atomic age. With a profound and tragic irony, the master of traditional aerial warfare died on the very day that his type of warfare became obsolete. Imagine this. What you've spent years perfecting, in an instant, becomes not just obsolete, but impossible. Your greatest personal record, one that no one has surpassed in decades, suddenly becomes unattainable, not due to a lack of talent in those who follow, but because the very rules of the game have changed. What must it feel like to be the last of your kind, whose glory is eternal, yet whose path is closed forever? Such was the astonishing fate of Richard Bong, a man whose 40 confirmed aerial victories 80 years ago set a record that, by all indications, will stand for all time. Today's aerial battles are a sterile world of radar screens and missiles launched beyond visual range. It will never again produce the close-quarters, visual dogfights that defined World War II. The era of the gunslinging ace, fighting face-to-face with the enemy, has irrevocably passed into history. But how did this humble farm boy achieve such greatness, becoming America's deadliest pilot? What exactly made him so unique in the air, and why are his methods still studied, even though the very conditions of combat have changed beyond recognition? Stay with us and watch until the end, as we would be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. However, the true value of Bong's contribution wasn't limited to merely the number of enemy aircraft he shot down. His impact was measured by the bomber crews he escorted to safety, the hope of ground troops who looked skyward for his saving shadow, and, most importantly, the revolutionary tactical doctrine he developed and implemented. These principles, established by him, subsequently saved the lives of countless other pilots and formed the foundation of American fighter tactics for many years. We will reveal what this doctrine entailed and how it changed the rules of the game. General George Kenney, the astute commander who recognized the genius behind the young rule breaker, later asserted that Bong was the greatest fighter pilot he had ever seen. Kenney emphasized that Bong's phenomenal success was rooted not in reckless aggression, but, on the contrary, in its complete opposite, in cool, calculated precision. He made the destruction of the enemy seem routine, for he had perfectly mastered reliable, repeatedly practiced tactical principles. These principles, as we will see, were far more complex than just accurate shooting. Stay with us and watch until the end. We'd be especially grateful for a like and a subscription. And of course, don't forget to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Decades later, at the Richard Bong Veterans Historical Center, located in his home state of Wisconsin, his Medal of Honor is respectfully housed in a modest exhibit. Nearby, a silent witness to a bygone era, stands a meticulously restored P-38 bearing the name Marge on its nose. Not merely an aircraft, but a living embodiment of the legend of the man and his war machine. This place serves as a powerful reminder of a time when a simple, quiet Midwest farm boy could, through sheer talent and iron discipline, ascend to a fighter cockpit and forever alter the course of history. His inspiring feats continue to resonate. The battlefields where fierce struggles once raged are now silent. The skies that served as the arena for his aerial duels have fallen quiet. Yet, Richard Bong's record remains etched in gold in the annals of global military history. 40 victories, 200 missions flown, and an enduring, eternal legend. This humble farm boy is forever remembered as America's deadliest and most elusive ace, whose story forever reshaped our understanding of aerial warfare.